Hello, everyone. I'm Ananda, the Galactic Mystic. And this year, a lot of people have been coming to me asking how they can celebrate Yuletide and how they can celebrate it in a way that perhaps has more cultural context and feels more meaningful to them. So I decided to make this video with some ideas on how we can create nourishing traditions for Yuletide. Recently, I was speaking to my neighbor from across the fence about our holiday plans, and she shared her anticipated frustration with this whole time of year, the overwhelm of gathering with her family, the workload, and really just an overall penetrating, bone deep dread. At least everyone is bringing a dish, she said, as if that were like the only light in this holiday season for her. And she asked what our plans were and if we were having a big gathering. And I said, no, it's just us. I do make a feast though. And she smiled and said something about how lovely that must be. And then she said, but you enjoy each other. I smiled and wished her well. And, she's always been a wonderful neighbor. But the truth is, I have intentionally created this Yuletide bubble over many years, and I do it for me. My family also happens to love the traditions we've created, but truly, it's all an act of self love and sacred self care. So, as I said in the beginning, um, people are hungry for this. And there's something about connecting to the past with our pre Christian ancestors that can feel very nourishing. And there is a tremendous amount of cultural heritage that is ours by birthright. And I'm speaking specifically here of those of European descent. A lot of times we think that Christianity is our heritage, but that is not true. Ancient people have held this time of year as sacred for longer than we know. And we know this because of the standing stones, megaliths, stone circles, and cairns aligned with the astronomical movements of the sun at winter solstice. We know this through records. We don't have a lot of records, but we do have some. And in the United States, we don't have cultural history on this land. And in the process of creating our societies here, we have become more cut off than we realize. And, that's how it feels to me at this time. And I also understand how this may feel overwhelming. Perhaps there are already set expectations and standard traditions in your family. And the thought of adding more or doing something different or learning a bunch of ancient history just doesn't feel nourishing. With that in mind, may I offer these ideas in the spirit of expanding our understanding of the sacredness of this time of year, adding more magic, meaning, and enjoyment to Yuletide in this year and in the years to come. One of my favorite traditions is the household spirit tradition. This is one of the most widespread and possibly more ancient vestiges of our ancestors, and is really already a part of the contemporary Christmas season. What you may call garden gnomes, Christmas elves, Santa's helpers, and even Santa himself are modern remnants of the household spirit traditions. Now, these are specifically Swedish, Finnish, and Norse in origin. The Nissa, Tomta, Tontu, these are all names for an adorable little deity who is dedicated to the care, protection, and prosperity of the household. And chances are, somewhere, you probably have a figurine of a gnome somewhere in your house already. The practice of leaving cookies for Santa, who is basically a large elf, derives from the tradition of leaving a bowl of rice porridge with butter and sometimes honey out overnight for the household spirit on Christmas Eve, Yule Eve, or winter solstice night. This is such an easy tradition to introduce to children because gnomes are cute, they're familiar, and their imagery and stories are plentiful and easy to find. And yet, this is such an ancient aspect of this holiday season. And it doesn't even matter if you believe literally in household spirits or not. The act of doing something specifically out of gratitude for our homes and the shelter and safety they provide for our families is in alignment with belief systems that help us return to connection and relationship with the world around us. This connection and relationship is what we as modern people have been separated from. I recently held a workshop in my private community about household spirits. A replay is available with membership. Honoring ancestors and leaving offerings. Something our pre-Christian ancestors did a lot of is leaving plates of food for our ancestors to enjoy. Sometimes the food would just be left out overnight, so supernatural visitors of all kinds in all forms, whether they be ancestral spirits, household spirits, or traveling spirits and deities, so they could partake in the meal. Sometimes these offerings were cast into the fire instead of being left out. Now, while it may not be practical to leave out all the supper mess until morning, make this work for you. Leaving out a plate after cleaning everything else up is a good compromise. At times, I have even left a plate outside. The historian Tacitus wrote that the Germanic people would leave their offerings outside, and if the dogs or the animals came and ate it, it was seen as the offering being accepted, and that was celebrated. This time of year was traditionally a time of divination for the family mystic, witch, or the wisdom keeper. On Yule Eve, Christmas Eve, or even New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, the practice of the year walk would offer prophecy for the 12 months ahead. One way this was done was to ritually prepare, and we can do that in whatever that means, whatever ways that works for us, and to take a walk. But they would walk in silence with a high quality of attention to what they saw and heard. And it is this presence of our attention that creates the invitation for prophecy and, signs, augurs, and omens from nature. And those who prophesied in this way were said to know whose crops would thrive or fail, who would die, who would get married, etc. It's also said that those who committed to the practice of the year walk after the 7th or 9th year would be bestowed with special gifts. Petrus Gaslander, who was an 18th century author, wrote about this practice, and I'm going to quote him. He said, "One must walk into a forest before first light on Christmas Eve, without looking at a fire, without food or drink, and walking so far that the crowing of a cock cannot be heard. Having done so, the year walker will now be able to see the events of the future, and by looking at fields and the roads approaching churches, can learn of the harvests and funerals of the coming year." Now, this practice can also be done while just walking around your home. Author Johan Bjorn Gardback says that it's done by walking around the home or premises near the home and to take meanings from anything that occurs on the way. Odd visions are said to be common, such as seeing headless shadows of those who are about to die or hearing various spiritual sounds and answers to specific questions. The cool thing is that we can tailor any of these traditions to our specific situation. Some people, myself included, begin Yuletide on December 20th. Some begin on the 21st, 24th, or even the 25th, and there's no wrong way. This is a season. Our ancestors did not celebrate 12 days of Yule or 12 days of Christmas. Their celebrations could be as short as 3 days or as long as the mead flowed, and as long as 2 months. This 12 days concept is pretty special, though. And at the very least, it offers a stretched out way of celebrating rather than an acute, intense way of being as we celebrate the return of the sun. Now, if you like the 12 days concept, you may find it interesting to know that it both represents the year to come, each day represents a month in the new year, and these 12 days represent a kind of time out of time because they are the leftover days from the lunar calendar of our ancestors and the fixed solar calendar we use today, because these calendars they can't reconcile. So in this interval between the ordinary count of days, in many different mythologies, this is when many gods, goddesses, and deities are born or conceived. And these days are filled to the brim with magic and supernatural visitations traditionally. And the quality of these days is said to reflect the quality of the year to come. Kathleen Matthews, who is an author, and she's also the former chosen chief of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. She says that within these 12 days lies a wonderful secret, for each of the 12 days is assigned to a month of the coming year, with the first day of Christmas, the 26th of December, as symbolic of January, the second day or 27th of December representing February, and so on, right through to January 6th, which represents December, yet to come. It was the custom of many to go out on each day of the Christmas festival to observe the signs in nature and divine from them the state of the year to come. The omens experienced on each of the Omen Days indicate the nature of each month in the coming year. The divining of oracles from nature has a long tradition in Celtic lore. The Scots Gaelic tradition of the frith, or the augury from the signs of nature, is well established. Listening to a bird's call was a critical part of Druidic lore, as was the movement and behavior of other animals. The real skill is to read the signs in accordance with your understanding at the time. Now, we can participate in the Omen Days tradition by taking a daily walk with that same quality of attention. I mentioned being crucial with the year walk. We can use tarot cards, oracle cards, runes, scrying, any method of divination that you work with, including simply just observing nature. And you also don't have to start on the 25th or the 26th. You can start whenever you want to. Just let it last for 12 days with the understanding that each day you are divining for a month in the next coming year. The key is to record what you divine each of the 12 days so you can return to your prophecies at the beginning and end of each month in the new year. Now, this practice is incredibly powerful. We learn our own individual prophetic and divinatory language and how to interpret what we see, feel, and sense. If none of these things I've mentioned float your boat, just pick one thing. All this divination and night walking may not be your cup of mead, or perhaps is too much to add and feels overwhelming. A simple way to be more present this time of year is simply to pay attention to what you're already doing and the why, the reason behind it. And then to weigh it, does it feel nourishing? Taking back this time of year requires this self honesty. We don't have to keep doing something simply because it's always been done. And in the spirit of paying attention, maybe there's one thing, one tradition you already do and absolutely love. And perhaps there is a cultural history behind this thing. Maybe you can create cultural meaning where it wasn't before. Diving into the history of Santa Claus, the stag that returns the sun on solstice, the Yule goat, or simply, infusing the food you cook or eat with magical purpose or intention, or following a thread of interest that derives from your ancestry or the land you live on. All of these things can change our autopilot, overstressed, and sometimes depressing experience of this holiday season. The good thing, well, there are a lot of good things, but some of the really good things about adding this cultural context beyond Christianity is that there are no sacred texts to fight over. There are no governing bodies controlling how we do things. So may we all reclaim this sacred season according to the nourishment we need most. May the return of the sun carry us forth with renewed hope. Much love.